So what does it take to get in? What does it take? This is the second part. It's pretty straightforward. People have this idea that somehow you have to be a criminal justice major, and I will tell you that is probably the worst major you could have. We are most interested in a broad range of people, from poets to computer scientists to people who are doing anthropology. We're not really all that interested in criminal justice majors, although we will look at them. So the baseline is this. You have to be a full-time student. You have to be a citizen. You can't be a foreign spy. You can't be a terrorist. You can't have a criminal felony conviction, and you need to be drug-free for 3 years. And the reason for that is, as we go through the application process and they do the background, again, this is not a get coffee, do copies kind of internship. You are a full-time employee with the FBI during this internship, and we give you a security clearance. And I'm going to come back at the end and talk about what the benefits to you are, but this is one of them. So you would get a security clearance. We bring you through the full employment process, and the only other sort of bottom line feature on this is they will look at your GPA. But frankly, what we're really looking for, and this is if you take nothing else away from today, this is the important piece. We're looking at the holistic student. So when we do the interviews, when we look at making choices for our interns, we're looking for maturity, we're looking for judgment, we're looking for breadth of experience, we're looking to see whether anybody but your mother and father has decided you're a great person and is going to be looking for you to be future leaders. So we're going to look at activities that would indicate for us these kind of things. The other piece that we look at and are very serious about is communication skills. So some of the things you're going to learn later today in the webinar, talking about how to do good interviews, how to make good presentations, are important, because as part of our process of hiring interns, we give you opportunities to explain yourself, to talk to senior agents like myself about how you do show maturity, how you do show good judgment, your interests, your breadth of interests, and can you communicate these things clearly, both in a written and sort of one-on-one format. So these are the qualities that are most important for us. Generally speaking, once you put in your application in August, we start doing interviews in November and December. We come up with a list of people who have met the basic requirements and are people that we're interested in based on sort of their holistic background. And we'll start putting you through the background process. Background process usually takes about 3 months. And then we do the final sort of screening as part of that background process to get you the security clearance, and you would start work at the end of that winter semester, which is why it's such a long timeline to get to that point. So that's the process going in. I'm happy to ask or answer questions about that as we go forward. But then the final piece on describing, what is it that comes of value in the internship? And I think there's two things. The first is this. If you've ever really had an interest in the FBI and all you really know about the FBI is either from television or from movies or what you see in the press or what you may have heard just in kind of papers, general community, then this is a chance for you to really look behind that curtain and to see what we really are like. Are these people that you want to spend, part of your career working with? Is this a job that you're interested in? Are there elements of the job you might never even have considered? For example, you might have thought all we do is law enforcement, but what you really want to do is public relations. And you discover that we have in every office a public affairs officer who does that kind of public relations work. So looking at the broad range of career possibilities available to you. It also gives you a chance to put your best foot forward. You have 10 weeks in this internship process to really convince us that you're the kind of person we'd like to see come into the organization and stay with us over the long term. And even if it's something that you don't want to do, even if you've decided to turn down our conditional job offer and find employment elsewhere, this is the second big advantage. When people look at job experience, they know that the FBI's standards for its internship program is pretty strict. We have over 60 applicants for every position that we have in our honors internship program. So by making it into that program, even if you decide not to stay, you've demonstrated that you've met a standard and criteria that most employers are interested in. But you also come away with what I was talking about earlier, the security clearance, so that if you wanted to work in the government or if you wanted to work in a business that does a lot of work with the U.S. government, you already have that clearance coming in. And it's the equivalent of about a $30,000 sort of employment bonus. That's what it costs to get somebody through this clearance process. So you have things that are of interest to the outside employer. You have good references. Even if you decide not to stay with the FBI as a career, it's a great stepping stone on the way to different other opportunities across different kinds of career and industry fields. So again, as you're looking at the Honors Internship Program as an example of what kind of internships are available, it's a great internship program for people who are willing to explore different possibilities and look at ways to take their interests that they bring into the internship and expand upon it within the FBI. The standards are pretty straightforward. If you can meet those basic standards and you're that kind of an individual who has shown maturity and judgment and leadership and a real drive to want to explore these new things, we're interested in you. And finally, even if you don't stay with us as that job career after you graduate, it's a great way to move forward and kind of distinguish yourself from other graduates coming out, to be able to look at employment beyond simply kind of entry-level jobs that a lot of people are looking at when they're graduating. So with that, let me open it up to questions if they have some now, and if they want to move to a small group. But I'll turn it back over to Teresa. All right.
Hi, Michael. This is Alex. I work here at the American Indian College Fund. I just wanted to talk a little bit about possibly, students might be interested in applying and everything, and then comes, if they're having to move for the summer or whatnot, housing could be a question that they're worried about as well. How does that work? Do you guys help with housing as far as getting them situated, or what's that process with that look like?
So twofold. If the bigger offices, a lot of the interns, if they're not from that area and don't have family to stay with, we try to put them in contact with other interns. So if they wanted to share an apartment, if they wanted to do a sublet, some of the places. So we facilitate through some social networking the possibility of finding opportunities. We also then had circumstances where other employees would provide some housing for the interns coming in. And that's particularly true in some of the high cost areas like New York or LA or San Francisco, where it's difficult to find people.
Right.
Things that as sort of the key piece to this, we're very flexible on the location. So a lot of our interns will either try to find a location where they have extended family, or if they don't have extended family, they have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a cousin or somebody that they know that works it in, and we are very accommodating about where they go. So an example of that is here in Las Vegas. So Reno itself is not an office, but is part of the Las Vegas division. But if we have an applicant who puts Las Vegas down, and then we make them that job offer for the internship, and they say, hey, you know what, my mom and dad live up in Reno, I'd rather be working in your Reno office or your Elko office or your South Tahoe office. We will have an internship available for them there.
Great. And then I just had one final question to talk on more. Is there a good time to apply for the internships? And then where exactly would students go to find that application specifically?
Absolutely. So the internship is a month-long window, and right now it starts in mid-August and goes through early September. And a couple different places to look. The best is fbijobs.gov, but any local FBI office on their webpage, and all the FBI offices have their own webpage, will also have links to the Honors Internship Program. So there's a variety of ways to get there. The initial piece is an online application.
Okay, awesome. All right, thank you so much.
I'm gonna roll right over.
All right.
Awesome. And then just one more plug I'd like to make. When Michael and I first met on an airplane, because I love chatting with folks, but we were also talking about the work that the FBI does in Indian country. And then I attended a workshop, a recruiting event. And I thought it was interesting that the agents were saying an area that they have a hard time recruiting applicants for is in Indian country. So if anybody listening, participating, is interested in serving Indian country in a different capacity through work with an organization like the Federal Bureau of Investigation, that's another career route. And it's not always law enforcement like that we often think of. So
victim services.
Victim services, the whole issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women. We were just talking about, the work that's being done nationally and work the FBI is looking at doing here locally in Nevada. So there's a lot of opportunities working with the FBI. And I was surprised to learn all the opportunities that weren't in like my stereotypical perspective of what the FBI does. So there's a lot of opportunities there. All right, so let's keep it moving. This is a great conversation. So next, I'd like to invite our friend Deanna Riviera, who's assistant professor at the University of Southern California. I'd like to bring you onto the podium so that you could share some tips with us on interviewing and what to do, what not to. Let me just check this question real quick before we move on, because it might be for Michael. Jonathan, do you have a question for Michael? I'm going to bring you onto the podium. Hi, Jonathan.
One of my fellow participants on here is asking about if visible tattoos. He said his raise hand function isn't working. So.
Okay, thank you.
So all of my tattoos are covered, but the general policy for the FBI is if you're in business attire like I am today and you're wearing a suit, if your tattoos are not visible, then that's not really an issue. One of the agents that Teresa's met with, who does a lot of our child and sexual violence crimes out on the colonies, she, for example, does have a tattoo that shows when she's not in business, but she covers it up with a watch. So generally, the only real red lines for us would be facial tattoos.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, and thank you for helping us out with that question. Appreciate it. All right, and way to use our question function. Thank you very much. All right, so Deanna, let's bring you up to the screen. Hey there, lady.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
To finally meet you. Yes, I can hear you. So if you could introduce yourself, and then I know you've got a lot of great advice to share about interviews, some tips and tricks and do's and don'ts. So I'm going to pass the podium to you, my friend.
Awesome. All right. So I came here. Well, let me first introduce myself. My name is Deanna, and the Taino. I'm of the Taino community, and I met Jack Soto, who is one of the people who works with the College Fund, and he and I have worked together for a long time, working with within the realm of education for College Horizons and things like that, organizations that work to connect Native college students with opportunities, either to get into college initially, to get into graduate school. And so a lot of my work is in relation to that. And currently I teach writing and law and American Indian studies. And I'm a lawyer by training, but I also teach writing. Because guess what? Lawyers have a lot of writing to do. So I teach writing, and what I was asked to talk about today specifically was the idea of the elevator speech. And I know that you might not necessarily know what that means, so I'll explain that in a moment. But what it has to do with is the way when we meet someone that we are hoping to engage with, to connect with in a professional way, the idea for me today to share with you is how we do that. How do we, in sometimes the very short bits of time that we have available to us, to connect with someone that might have an internship available, might have a job available, might have a grant available eventually if you were to start working in the world of the nonprofit sector. Grant writing is a very important part of that. And sometimes you might be in an elevator with someone, or walking into a Starbucks, or walking into a coffee shop, or see someone that you know works for that entity. And the idea is that you would try to prepare to be able to approach that person and have a very, very short amount of time to say to them, this is what I'm interested in. This is who I am. This is what I'm interested in. This is what I'd like to do with your organization or entity. Now, literally in real life, it probably won't happen exactly quite like that. You probably it is possible that you might literally be in an elevator with one of the people that you imagine working with or for, but more realistically, You will either be in an interview with that person after having applied, or in the application process. Sometimes many applications will ask for a very short answer to who you are and what you feel connected to about that organization in order to figure out whether you would be someone they would want to interview. And just as Michael was mentioning, for instance, at the FBI, if you were to be interviewed, one of the things that they would be looking for, and this is not only unique to the FBI, though I'm very glad to hear that that is the case there, many internship opportunities will also really want to make sure that you fit, that they fit you and that you fit them. And that is one of the biggest things that I really want you to take away from this conversation today. When we think about interviewing, when we think about applying to places, we often get so caught up in the idea of, am I fit for them? But one thing you always want to try to keep in mind, and it's hard because being humble doesn't always allow you to do this, but you always want to remember that they also have to fit you. The organization that you're applying to and wherever you're applying to also needs to fit you. And so you also, in a sense, get to interview them, and you get to figure out what they want. And some of the things that, some of the exercises that I do with my students to walk them through how to get there, I want to introduce you to some of those exercises. And doesn't mean you have to do them right now. You don't have to take pen and paper out right now. If you want to, you can. But I have supplied the College Fund with the worksheets that I will sort of be referencing. But these are the key factors that I want you to keep in mind. When you are thinking about applying to a place, whatever it might be, whether it's the ultimate job that you aspire to after 4 years of university, after 2 years of college, or an internship in between, the goal should be to match each other. And the goal should be to figure out a way that your strengths and the things that you're interested in match with their goals and their values. And in order to do that, it means that you need to do a little bit of research, and you need to think about who your audience is. So as you're applying, as you're writing a cover letter, as you're writing a personal statement, yes, you want to put your best foot forward for yourself. Yes, you want to show them your strengths, but you also want to show them that you have an awareness of who they are. And you want to show them and demonstrate an awareness of how you think you would fit with what they're doing and their values and goals. So one of the worksheets that I plan to share with you will walk you through that. But let's talk a little bit about that as well. So that's where we're going in the next 15 minutes or so. And do I see a hand up? Yes.
It's just me. I did upload the worksheets, and I can pull them up at one time. So just cue me which worksheet you want me to upload, and I'll broadcast it.
Great. If you wanted to upload the one that is the only Word document, the others are all PDFs. The one Word document, I think it says arriving at the elevator speech. I think that's what it's called. If you wanted to show that or upload that, that would be fine. But you don't have to. If I can be up and it can be up at the same time, great. If not, that's
it can be both up at the same time, but I only uploaded your PDFs because I can only upload PDFs.
Oh, you can. I didn't realize that.
3 PDFs I have uploaded.
And that's great. And for that, I can just talk through what the other worksheet does, and then I will send that to you as a PDF so that you can share that.
Okay, I'll see if I can translate right.
Okay, that's cool. So first thing first though is this phrase elevator. You will hear it, and what it really means, and the goal behind it is what I mentioned before. There might very well be a moment, and there very well could be a moment, where you will be running into very accident someone that you would like to work with, someone that you admire, someone that you want to work on a project. And you might want to take that very brief opportunity to call the elevator because it's unusual about the amount of time that we take for you to travel up and down the elevator with that person. So what you want to say. And what you want to say is what I was referring to before. Connection between your strengths and what they have to offer. And what I would like to think though, what I want to share with you also is you can't really get to the elevator without thinking first about the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is a much bigger picture of life and a much bigger picture of elevators move very quickly. But if you think more along the lines of 3 different types of verbal and or written descriptions of who you are, that might help. Hi.
The audio went crazy as soon as I took myself down to the podium, and as soon as I brought myself back up, it started working again. So I'm just going to sit here as you finish your presentation.
That sounds fantastic. And I'll just take maybe another 10 minutes or 7 minutes so that we stay within our time.
Perfect.
Very briefly.
The last few things you said didn't translate. It sounded like the peanuts. So if you
Wah, 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 wah.
yes. So you want to repeat the last few things?
So I'll go back really briefly. There are 3 basic ideas that I want to try to convey to you that about how to craft this idea of an elevator speech. And the elevator speech, again, is just the idea that you have this really super brief time and on an application, a super brief space to convey who you are and how you match that organization. But there are really 3 different ways to think about this. And I call it the lunch talk, the very long Starbucks line talk, and then the elevator speech. So if you imagine that you actually have the luxury of sitting down to lunch with that person that you admire or that you hope to work with, that's a much longer conversation. And being able to have available to you the language and the connections that you would like to make should you have that luxury is one thing. If you take that and you refine it down to the accidental, I ran into this person on the coffee line at Starbucks, or fill in your favorite coffee place, and imagine how long that line is. It's a little longer than an elevator, but it's definitely shorter than a lunch. And that's also the idea behind that is that if you have the luxury of a lunchtime talk with someone, you have a give and take. And you can assume that you get to say how you feel, the kinds of things that you're strong at, the kinds of things that you're interested in. You get a chance to say all of that and get feedback. In a line at Starbucks, you don't have that choice. You have to very quickly and succinctly get to, this is what I want to bring to your organization. This is what my strengths are. And here's what I know your organization is doing that I know I could contribute to. And even shorter than that is the elevator speech. And the idea there is to just grab their attention enough that they want to talk to you at Starbucks or that they want to talk to you at lunch. Now, these things do actually happen when you bump into each other at conferences and things like that. That actually does happen. You will run into somebody in an elevator if you go to conferences, and it's a wonderful place to get internships. But even in the context of a written document, like a written application, many applications are set up in a very similar way. The personal statement is sort of the equivalent of the lunch talk. It's where you have the opportunity to speak or write more at length about the ways in which your strengths connect to the things that that organization is doing. There often are short answer questions as well. And in those short answer questions, that's where you have the opportunity, I like to frame it positively, but it's an opportunity to more briefly and in a short way explain different strengths under different questions. All of them are important. All of them display who you are as a person, what your values are, and what your strengths are. And I really want to impress upon all of you the idea that this is hard for a lot of us. It's hard for a lot of Native community members to feel like you're not being boastful when you go to pride yourself in front of a community of people that you essentially have to impress. It's not always easy for us. And one of the things that I want to try to impress upon all of and remind myself as well is that when we're trying to focus on our strengths and share those strengths with other people, we want to remember that the ancestors before us really wanted us to put our best foot forward. Our ancestors didn't survive everything they survived so that we would not recognize our strengths. Our strengths are indeed the same strengths that our ancestors have indeed given us. And so being, I won't say boastful, but having humility is incredibly important, but it is also, it can work simultaneously with the idea of really pulling through your strengths. And the exercises that I posted walk through 3 different strategies. One is an audience exercise where you really do your research and you really do think about Who are the people I'm trying to connect with? Which is what makes a personal statement or even the short answers on an internship application really effective. When you do the research and you know not only what does the organization do that I'm applying to, but who runs the organization? What other things has that person done? Research that person. Research anything that person has written. Know what that person has written. Know the staff members. Know where they came from. Do a little bit of investigation to see who really are you writing for? And ask yourself, are these people that I can imagine myself working with for 10 weeks or longer? And do they hold a similar value set that I have? And whatever the answer is, whether you can really figure that out or whether you can't, or whatever the answer is, then the question becomes, well, what values do I want to bring to the organization? And what values how would they benefit from having me there? And that's the hard part. And that's the part that we have to really hold on to and yes, be humble, but also honor that we got here because so many people before us sacrificed for us to be here. And that now we get to put that foot forward and we get to show somebody what strengths we can bring to them. And believe me, they are needed. Your strengths are needed. Your talents are needed. Your values are needed. We all need reminders of those. So whether it's the FBI or whether it's another organization, a nonprofit, all of it matters. So yes, the worksheet is there. Yes, the worksheet I hope will be valuable to you. It walks through this process that I'm talking about very step by step in baby steps. And it's just a writing exercise, but hopefully if you keep it and keep a clean version of it that you can use over and over and over again for personal statements, for cover letters, for brief answers, for preparing for interviews, it's intended to give you the long version, the short version, and the medium-sized version. And that's my goal for you, is to just have that and practice, 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 and research, research, research. So thank you. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
So if anybody has any questions at this time, please raise your hand or type a question and Deanna can answer that right now. And then Deanna, I'll talk with Jack and our communication manager about how we can best disseminate those files that you sent over. I did, while people are typing their questions, because I hope we have a couple questions, the files I did upload, which we will look for opportunities to share with the participants. That's the tightening passive
voice.
Fantastic. It's so small I can't see it, so I don't know.
Yeah.
And then second one, writing application essay.
Great.
Second document. And then the third document, points to make.
So all of those documents are pre-writing documents that would help you think through. Some of them are revising documents, but the points to make list is a great one because it's literally what points do I want to make about myself? And what points do I know about that other entity? And in effect, make a matching game out of it. What things does this organization do? And what values do they hold dear that I can figure out through my research? And what values do I hold dear? And where do we match up? And if you're making a points to make about that, it helps you prepare mentally, either before going to a conference, before going to an interview, before filling out an application, before writing a personal statement. It helps you play that matching game. And the more of a matching game you can make it, the more that you, first of all, can feel empowered that it is indeed something that they need to sell themselves to you as well. And it's also a way for you to see how the balance of power is happening, that you really are trying to match. It's not only you trying to tell them they should hire you or they should take you. It really is about equalizing that power a little bit.
Yes. Man, I wish we had longer. There's so much more we can talk about. Michael's over here nodding his head. I'm nodding my head like, those are great points. So, minutes left. I'd like to spend, we have a question.
Yes, I see.
I always love it. And Jonathan, our second rock star for the evening. So it's published this question. Oh, there we go. In your experience, how often have you used an elevator pitch? How important is it?
Great question. I so many times that I don't think I can count. There have been many times when I've used it in passing in a hallway with a professor when I was still a student, for example. In passing, I would maybe have heard about an internship, and I would have a way to sort of see if my professor thought it was something I should apply to. And by having done my research and having sort of figured out where my strengths were, I would drop that quickly with the professor walking down the hall and see how that person reacted and whether this was really something I should do. I have literally been in an elevator with people who were people who worked with, for example, Native Americans in Philanthropy, which is an organization that helps Native community members find places to seek grants. And so many times. So what I've done every time I go to a conference, I always try to figure out who's going to be there and what types of community members are going to fill that room, and try to do my research so that I have a sense of who I might run across and how I might want to connect with those people.
Absolutely. I was going to break out into small groups so that people could ask Michael questions and you questions individually, but since we're getting close on time and we have more questions, I'm just going to invite Michael to slide over, and we'll just go ahead and take care of the questions right now. So next question. So if anybody has any questions for Michael or Deanna, this would be the time. Okay, when is the right time in the interview process to ask about benefits and salary? Ooh, good one.
Oh, that's an excellent question.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on how long the process is. If you know that there's going to be a first interview and a second interview, I would usually do it. If I'm going to do it because there's only one interview, I would absolutely do it sort of toward the end, and just as a way of saying, how do we both sort of mutually benefit here, and what kinds of, and the benefits question is actually the easiest segue into it, because then you're not talking specifically numbers about how much is my salary going to be right away. I think the benefits question is a great way to segue into that, and then it opens that conversation up for you, because benefits are so different in different places, and there might be some that they don't advertise openly that you might benefit from, and they'd be happy to share that with you. And then once you're in that conversation, it becomes much more natural, in a sense, to then get to the question of salary. So I would start with benefits. At least that's my advice, and I'm happy to hear other people who might feel differently.
Yeah, the only sort of thing you need to be aware of too, and it's exactly what Deanna was saying earlier, have an understanding of who you're interviewing with. Because if you're interviewing with like a government organization for an internship, there is no salary negotiation.
Right.
That salary based entirely on your position. So if you're coming in and trying to negotiate a salary with an organization that has no flexibility to do that, it's going to set out that you didn't do your research, you didn't do your background coming in. So kind of knowing what your flexibility is important.
All right, we have another question. Thank you, Amber. So this question is for Michael. The opportunity for the FBI internship, can juniors in college apply?
Yes, but there's one criteria for it. So if you're applying as a junior right now, we're already past next summer's deadline. So we've already started our application process and interviews for the summer of 2020. But what we frequently have is, although the goal is to get through college in 4 years, less and less people are actually doing that. So you may in fact be a junior, but know that you're going to be, for example, like my current intern, taking one more semester in your senior year. So as long as you're still enrolled at the end of your internship, we will accept you. And that can mean you're looking at going on to grad school. We've had interns do that, where they have graduated, but they've already been accepted into grad school, so they know they're going back in. But if you're looking to graduate, we don't have to look at an internship. We can look at the college hiring initiative. We're currently hiring right now for entry-level positions, and we'd be glad to have that discussion outside the internship.
Awesome. You got the hookup right here, Amber. Hey, Alex.
Hello. I just had one more question for Michael specifically. I know for students, they had to meet certain criteria in order to, pass the background check. And, what would be advice for students, like, that criteria maybe being in that 2-year range of maybe, when you said having not done any drugs before, like, does at any point, what would be some advice for students who really want to get into the FBI but might be struggling with that 3-year time frame? What advice do you have for students who are really want to get into this field still?
So the stock answer is don't do drugs.
Right.
We have that a lot. The biggest
Okay.
biggest things that eliminate both intern applicants as well as just regular applicants for us, and frankly we lose 5 in this process. Wow. Is the issue of drug use, and then for your security clearance, there's a polygraph test specifically for basically, are you a terrorist? Are you a foreign spy? But in there, they ask a question related to the honesty of the information you provide, and it goes to your question. So there are a lot of students who will say, okay, I had a crazy freshman year in college.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's wonderful stuff. And I'm now applying for this job, so it's right at that 2.5 to 3 year mark, so I'll be fine. So they say, no, I haven't used drugs in 3 years. They get to the polygraph, and that's kind of all-encompassing question happens, and they find themselves in a candor situation. And
Right.
the one that will just eliminate you entirely for the FBI is the lack of candor. If we have applicants who come to us and say, hey, look, I had that wild party in my sophomore summer year, and I may have used some marijuana. It's Nevada. It's legal in Nevada. What we'll say is, okay, we really want you. You meet all our criteria. You meet our culture. You're interested in us. Why don't we wait 6 months? And in that 6-month period, we continue to have contact with you. We work you through the application process, but we won't put your application in until you are 100% sure that you are 3 years out, because that will be in the process. So we absolutely work with applicants along those lines.
And I think it's important that
Thank you.
specify marijuana, because a lot of people, because it's maybe legal in your state, a lot of people don't think of it as a drug or illegal, but it's not allowed for the FBI.
Yeah, federally, it's still legal. The one caveat that comes up, actually, unfortunately, more often than not, and I do a lot of recruiting events with the universities here in Nevada, is I'll have students who will talk about either they've been roofied or they have been exposed to drugs and not intentionally. And the FBI is pretty flexible about that. If that is in fact the circumstance, that somebody gave you something that you didn't use yourself by choice, that would not eliminate you in the process. And a lot of people find themselves in that situation.
Unfortunately.
Great. Thank you for the information.
All right, guys, we're just past 12 o'clock, and so I better start wrapping it up. Wanted to take a quick moment to thank Michael and Deanna for taking time out of your busy schedules to come join us today to chat with our students and some of our student support service staff. If there are any questions that anybody has, you can feel free to email us and we can try to help you acquire those answers through our contacts. But until next time, we do have several upcoming webinars coming up. I want to encourage you to join us for those upcoming events listed right here. Here we go. So next week, November 15th, we have a shindig using the same platform on scholarships, how to find scholarships and apply. On November 20th, we're also going to have a Makoha guided meditation shindig. And then on December 5th, we have a resume writing video that we're going to be posting. The registration information for all of those events are on our Facebook page and our website. Our website is collegefund.org, and our Facebook page, well, we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Native Pathways. So please follow us, like our pages, comment, share. We appreciate it. Okay, thanks for joining us today. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.